So, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to interview you and get to know a little bit more about your profession.
Absolutely.
All right, so the first question I'm going to ask you, what are your two reasons why you decided to pursue this career?
When I first started getting into therapeutic exercise was here at Cal State LA. I took 4360, which was back then was known as 436. And it was so interesting for me to see how people progressed over time. People come in with pain and weakness. They tell us that, my balance is really poor. Or they even tell us, my balance is so bad, but I really want to be able to dance with my wife at my son's wedding. And all of those little moments made me realize how fun and how impactful PT can be.
Yeah.
And so that's why I ended up pursuing it.
Okay, that's nice, interesting, being able to have that idea, right?
I know.
So what are the type of trainings you had to complete to get to where you're at?
Okay, so finish undergrad, which I actually finished in 5 years. And then I took a 2-year gap year where then I finished my prerequisites. Mm-hmm. So because I didn't have it as part of my program here, I had to go take my bio, my chem, my physics. And then after that, the whole process for applying to PT school is a little bit rigorous. So you have to take the GRE, you have to fill out your application, which takes time. You have to reach out to former professors for letters of recommendations. That also takes time. So just FYI, if you ask for a letter of recommendation, give that at least 2 months.
Okay, good to know.
Because it takes some time. Because we also procrastinate. Some less than others.
Yeah.
And then after that, graduate schooling is about 3 years. Mm-hmm. Now, once you're a graduate school and then you finish, you take your board exam, you can go and practice as a general PT. You've got general knowledge. Yeah. But some people choose to specialize and they actually choose to go into residency. And so you can do residency for an additional, I think it's a year or 2 years. And that takes extra time. So all in all, for me personally, I didn't go into residency, so I think it was 5, more or less 8 to 9 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a long time, huh?
My path wasn't straight. My path was in circles.
Yeah, but it's good to know, because I'm also looking into that.
Yeah.
So
and it's helpful, I think, for students to know that there are people out there whose paths did not go straight line. Yeah. It was in big circles.
Yeah. I kind of felt that way too, because I was I'm not gonna go straight into it after my undergrad. So
there's a lot of students who don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
I worked I worked 2 jobs while I was in undergrad. And then when I was done with undergrad, the 2-year gap period, I worked 2 to 3 jobs. So I was always working all the time because I didn't have the luxury of going straight. I had to make money.
Yeah. Same situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that you actually finished, what are your responsibilities? What do you do?
Okay. So I, up until April, I was a full-time staff PT at Martin Luther King Hospital. Mm-hmm. So I work acute care, that's what it's called. Yeah. And I work with a lot of pretty sick people. And then after April, I needed a change of pace. So I'm now working what's called a per diem. Basically, is I just work when I want to.
Oh, okay.
They have certain requirements. You have to work a certain amount of weekends a month. Mm-hmm. But all in all, I went from working a 40-hour work week to now, I think, as a PT, I might only work up to 20 hours a week as a PT. So I work still at MLK, and then I also work at Beverly Hospital in Montebello. Okay. And so both I do hospital PT or acute care. So I see people after surgery, and I see anybody from people in the intensive care units. I see them when they just had a stroke. I'll see them after they've had major neurosurgery. Yeah. I have also seen people after major heart surgeries. So I see them when they're really, really sick before we even talk about going home.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. That is cool.
It is. It requires a lot of medical knowledge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of preparation that goes before I actually get somebody out of bed. So like the type of PT I do focuses on, can they get out of bed? Are they able to stand? Can they walk? And all of this I'm looking at, are they able to do all of these little aspects safely?
Yeah.
Because if they're not able to do it safely, or they need more supervision, it tells us about their ability to perform these tasks at home and whether or not they should be going home. Because then that actually ends up being, we also think about how much burden will this place on the family, and how much burden will this place on the caregivers. And it's a lot of navigating.
So you would use that as like your evaluation, right? Like, are they able to do this?
Correct.
Okay.
That is my main responsibility as a hospital or acute care PT, is we assess all in all based on their strength, their range of motion, their balance, their vitals even, the way that their blood pressure stays stable. All of that I look at it and I go, okay, well, can this be managed at home? And if it can't be managed at home, well, what are our options?
Yeah. Okay. So, like, now that when you're dealing with them, like, you know, like trying to figure out what they're struggling with, how do you motivate them to, like, actually get up and recover?
Ooh, that's a very, very good question. Let me just check this real quick, make sure that everybody's in. Okay. So I work in a specific population where I work a lot with people with psychiatric disorders. It's just the general community that we work in. A lot of them have either undiagnosed psych disorders, or they are diagnosed and they didn't continue their meds. This is actually a very complicated question, and it has to do with social determinants of health, because specifically in South Los Angeles, you look at a lot of the unhoused, a lot of the transients, and a lot of people who've lost their homes, especially during the pandemic. People were not able to work. People became homeless. And if you're homeless, then you don't have your basic needs met. So if you don't even have a safe place to care for yourself, then it's hard for you to medically care for yourself. I recently had a patient who said, I have all of these issues and I can't take care of these issues in a public toilet. So those are, sorry, I kind of like went on a tangent, but those are the kinds of things that are kind of, I have to think, okay, how do I motivate somebody who's got X, Y, and Z issues? And how do I motivate them to get out of bed? And a lot of it is, you have to find, building rapport is one of the most important things. When you work with anybody, not just a PT. If you're just a human talking to another human, is kind of identifying what are their interests. It's the reason why goal setting is, I think, one of the most underappreciated tasks that we have, because you always have to look at, what do they want to do? You know, what do they want to get back to? What's important to them? Especially since healthcare workers, all of us have jobs to do, and so and we're always doing things under a deadline. So it's hard not to go in and go out, go in and go out, and you push your agenda. But ultimately, you have to look at your patient and you're like, okay, well, today, here's the thing. Like, don't you want to be able to wash your own hair today? You know, I work with occupational therapists who work on self-care tasks. And we tell them, I'm like, don't you want to be able to go to the bathroom by yourself without somebody having to wipe you? Like, don't you want to do that for you? So it's a lot of motivational speaking in some ways. I think that part of our jobs has a little bit of psychology involved, which was something I think I knew and I didn't quite understand until I started getting into it. But
are you able to like teach them like coping skills or anything?
You know, another underutilized thing, deep breathing. People are very anxious. So another thing about being in the hospital is knowing that there are so many things out of that person's control that they are, I always think these people are in the worst times of their lives. And you basically have taken away some of their independence. So for example, when a person comes in and they walked into the hospital and they got really sick, and because they got really sick, they got really weak, and then when they're really weak, they have really bad balance.
Yeah.
Something that they implement in the hospitals, and they tell them, call, don't fall, so they'll put the bed alarms on. So for them to get up and go to the bathroom, all of a sudden you went from somebody who could do it at home, get up, go to the bathroom, and then now they have to ask for permission. So it's a huge change in what they are, quote unquote, allowed to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered that question, but...
Well, it did, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Like a lot of, well, at least I also get really anxious.